But just because it's unified consciousness and oneness does not mean that God likes all of it. And that is why those who awaken and get free from identification with form or flesh, God will begin to guide those persons as tools, as weapons in this battle here between this, to try and satiate the unnecessary suffering that the mind of God does not like. The heart of God loves everyone, but the mind of God does not like every element of creation arising. But it had to be that way. For freedom to be real, for love to be real, infinite potential had to be the way. If those of us among the human family who have fallen into a state of consciousness and an arising of realization that everything is one, that we are all connected by that oneness, and that God, as we label this, is present in all things. The awareness that is looking through your eyes and my eyes, the awareness of all that is, this core base fundamental of consciousness and manifestation. If it is there, then most will ask, when having not experienced that themselves, but heard about it and tickled it and understands there's something to it, if that is so, then why on earth do we have events and persons acting out that which we commonly label evil? Wrongdoing in the world is a reality. We see it. But also seeing the world through the heart of God, non-dual vision, is also an important reality. So what on earth is going on? And all I can say is that I am not saying anything that I want you to believe. I'm not giving you an idea. I'm not giving you a belief. I am giving you an experience that your body, your human element of who you are, the man or woman you are, that rose up from the soils of earth like this tree did behind me, can attune to, align to, and experience as consciousness, as awareness in this field of consciousness. It is not unattainable. It is not an idea. It is something all can access. And so if you haven't been there and you have these questions, it's very natural, because the mind is coming from a state of duality. The mind is coming from an obvious state of clearly that's wrong and clearly that is right, or clearly that's light, clearly that's dark. And the loving eyes of God does not judge. And so when you access the heart of God in consciousness through the non-dual vision and the lack of judgment there that follows from there, then for those who haven't been there, it just seems like a totally alien concept. When you do reach there, though, there are things that you realize. You are given realizations. Things are awoken in you. You commune with higher dimensions. You are gifted knowledge, wisdom, however you want to call it. And it's all from source. It's not from a separate, it's coming from God's love for us. When you get there, you acknowledge with clarity that potentiality of all that is. We are manifestation from consciousness. We are separated form manifesting from consciousness, and we are connected to that awareness that is permeating everything around you, that is the unconditioned love of God. And at this very core foundation of all that is, this we call an unconditioned love of God, because it is an eternal giving forth of energy and allowance for experience, manifestation, creation and life as we experience it here and beyond in other dimensions also. It's a persistent giving energy, like the sun is a persistently just giving energy that gives us warmth and light. It just gives and gives and gives. The foundation is also a persistent giving energy. And to our ability to define it, eternal, infinite as well. That core energy, to allow for this, had to make a decision to allow for infinite potential. If not, that core energy would be writing a script for reality, and the experiences we have would not be one of true love and true freedom. They would be one of a script. And so with inside infinite potential for manifestation, there are of course infinite potential roads that we will end up walking on, or that will manifest inside this field of awareness and consciousness. When you access the loving eyes of God, you see the world with all love and acceptance for what's going on. But many fall into this trap of saying, then everything is okay. And they become quite dark, actually, from doing this. Now, inside this potential, infinite potential that we have, inside this field of awareness and consciousness, there is the potential for that which is becoming conscious of itself and the world around it to identify with form and not with this infinite awareness that is the unconditioned love of God behind it all. And for those of us who have grown up in the West, we heard a lot in any talk of God's spirit and flesh. Those who identify with spirit are identifying with the infinite. Those who identify with flesh are identifying with form. They are identifying in a state of delusion that they are merely this form. And as they identify as that, they create a void, a separation. And that separation is deeply uncomfortable. It is painful to experience this separation. And what happens is the separation of identifying as form and not as the interconnectivity. The separation that makes you feel that your skin separates you from the world outside you instead of is a gift to connect you with the ever-expanding experience and of manifestation. If you want to say there was a big bang and it's banging, and the outskirts of that, which are timeless as they continue to go, they are a timeless experience. I am the outskirts of that bang talking to you, and you are the outskirts of that bang listening. And some of us are aware we are the outskirts of that, and we are on that flow of expansion. And others, for all they are part of that flow of expansion, have begun to play out the illusion of creating a psychological construct which is separate from it. When you lose your connection to that field and that love which is felt there and that unity which is felt there, the void that occurs from the illusion of creating a psychological construct of who you are, person in your mind, and identifying with the form, it creates quite a bit of suffering, and we feel contracted and tense. And in this expression of infinite potential in manifestation that we all are, that creates a suffering in the person, and those persons can suffer themselves, or to try and satiate and end that suffering will act out many different routes which we can see hurt other people. And so living in this world is clearly expressing duality with a non-dual vision is explained within there. When you access the heart of God, you see the world through the loving eyes of God, then you do love all things. I love every person I meet. I have been gifted and blessed with this vision, which arose a family of nearly 200 children in crisis, and it's been a wonderful journey, and I've loved every moment and every child there. But I have not liked every moment, and I have not liked every child. And that might be hard to swallow, but some of our children were struggling and recovering from being rape victims or being rapists themselves, and some expressions of themselves as a person I did not like. And so I did not like what I saw, but I had love totally for these children despite that. As we continue on this journey, and many persons and society is building itself based on identification with form, we loosely play with the idea of spirit and connectivity and God, but we don't build our society based upon that. We don't make that an important focus in our education system to make sure our children are rooted in that element of reality. And rather, we persist in actually cementing further separation. You must build up this personality inside you. You must work out what you're going to be. And we formulate this psychological construct, which in time loses its presence and beingness due to how we do it. You will get this progression when you come through this channel of time, when you get to the end of school, when you get to the end of... It just drags you away from beingness and into this play inside the mind of time and the person and its journey. When that separation becomes too vast, those humans who identify with form are the ones who give birth to the activities that we commonly label wrongdoing or bad or evil in the world. And they do it because of the void and disconnectivity. They do it because underneath all of it is an unconditioned love. And when you access that unconditioned love and it comes forward, when you identify with form, the form you identify as, or the person, takes hold of that love and chooses where it will go and will not go. I will not love you because I don't forgive what you did in the past. I will not love you because you identify with this form and I identify with this form. I will not love you because I am afraid to love you, etc. I will not love you because you're my neighbour's child and not my own child. However it expresses through this filter of the person in the mind. And when you access oneness, that filter begins to fade away because you acknowledge the illusion of the filter. You are born again. You acknowledge that you are not an Englishman or John or whatever label you've got, your career path. These are labels to keep track of the energetic expression you are. But the energetic expression you are is rising up from the soils of creation, just like the forest is, just like the river is, just like your city rose up from the soils of creation inside the forest. But most people think there are trees in their city. They don't see that anymore because of this separation, that the city has risen from the forest. And so in time, when you spend time in that presence, in that beingness, it becomes evident that the heart of God loves all and does not judge anything, but it does not like every element of creation that is arising. And as creation is arising, and you stay in beingness, this force, this energy, this love will come and start communicating and guiding you to end the suffering and the pain that is arising inside creation that it does not like. And that there is the force of God's will, the will of unconditioned love. And there's a big difference between the will of unconditioned love and love as a mere foundation for all that has been allowed for in infinite potential and infinite manifestation. That love is wonderful, but when you access it and you lose track and think that means everything is okay, you can get into a very dark place, as I mentioned earlier. You can begin to feel that everything is totally acceptable. And at some point in consciousness, it's important to acknowledge that forces, larger, stronger, powerful beings, powerful, more large, more energetically capable than we humans, also made this path, feeling that this infinite field of potential and consciousness and manifestation was more like a prison than a gift, and so wished to control it and separate from it, not realizing it was it. And so it was always an impossibility. But it identified with its own form, and so pride arose. And in identifying with its own form, it too separated, and it too, just as with humans will abuse one another, steal from one another, cheat one another, lie to each other, to try and fulfill that void ultimately. Because you don't do that to the things you love, and when you understand you are one with all, you love all. And likewise, higher energies than human also do the same. Higher energies than human also have that expression going on, that void. And so as this energy, they as well, if we want to label it in a higher dimensional sense of other forms of energy, they will see humans as an opportunity to try and fill that void as well. And so the difficult thing is that when humans live with dual vision and don't access non-dual vision, they feel contorted, and when they feel contracted, they vibrationally match these other energies, and this creates a vicious cycle where people get caught up, and in its all core, the whole core of it all is trying to fulfill that void, the void of believing and identifying with form. And you will see it. Those who identify so heavily with form, those who identify completely with form, and this is all I am, is just this human here now, they will have the least amount of compassion in the world. They will have the least amount of compassion in their words, and you can witness this occurring. It's not always the case, but it's the case when it's dead cert and there's no space for anything else, because this becomes delusional. And of course, right now we have war, because there are persons who identify with form of nationality. And this is never going to end. Never going to end. Because the problem we have is that we are continuing to allow our species to identify with form, instead of identifying with a factual reality and experience of unified consciousness and oneness. But just because it's unified consciousness and oneness does not mean that God likes all of it. And that is why those who awaken and get free from identification with form or flesh, God will begin to guide those persons as tools, as weapons in this battle here between this, to try and satiate the unnecessary suffering that the mind of God does not like. The heart of God loves everyone, but the mind of God does not like every element of creation arising. But it had to be that way. For freedom to be real, for love to be real, infinite potential had to be the way. And that is why, when you sit in beingness, you will understand why we have wrongdoing, and why we have these things we commonly label evil, when God is present in all things. How do persons access and say God's love is present in all things, and yet we have a war going on and poverty and so on and so forth? It's because they access that persistent giving foundation of God's unconditioned love. Those who stay there and loiter there and don't progress into the point where that energy comes through and says, yes, you have seen the truth, but now in this infinite potential there is still great meaning in ending the suffering of other humans, because this I don't like. And I assure you that this element of consciousness is there, and it takes hold of lives like my own and directs them to do things, and many others around the world too. And that is God's love. That is God's mind in cooperation with God's love. Because we can love all, but you don't have to like all. God bless, guys. Take care. Bye. Over the years, many of you know I have used this channel to be the sole source of promotion for the work that we do to bring God's love into this world out in Tanzania. Up to now, using the publicity from this channel and the love and kindness of those human beings who are among those watching, we have managed to build a special needs community, a village dedicated to the care and support of special needs children in crisis. Some of these children come from the most horrendous backgrounds, And thanks to that village and that community that we call Feathers Tail, a great deal of love and healing has been provided in their lives. Our family in Tanzania is now made up of nearly 200 children who are in need of a loving family home. And I'm just making this to say thank you to everybody who supports what we do. Thank you to everybody who shares what they can, be it time, resources, fundraising and creativity found there. Thank you. You have made the foundations of our family possible. And it is through you guys and your love and support that we are able to bring this spark of God's unconditioned love into the world. If you want more information on our projects, please visit www.sharetanzania.com. God bless, guys. Enjoy the rest of the video.